So I know this may come as a shock to all of you. This is something none of us would have ever expected, but Nintendo may possibly be secretly developing a new Nintendo Switch, a hardware revision for the Nintendo Switch. It's crazy. I know, an upgraded version of the current console? Who could have predicted such a thing? Well, the sages over at the Wall Street Journal, for one, and they're going a step further and saying that this next Switch Plus, I don't know, what should we call it, will be dropping late next year. I think this is one of those we have dads that work at Nintendo type deal. They have insiders. Now, to go into further detail, you'll have to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal to read the entire article, or you could just go over to Nintendo Life and get a bit of a summary for free. Nintendo Life, a better, more respected news outlet, I'd say, than Wall Street Journal. But even what's there is, again, pretty obvious. This would be a move to maintain sales momentum. There's a ton of possible upgrade options at their disposal, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, let's talk about it. Anyone who follows gaming to any degree, I think, expects a new Switch to come at some point. But is 2019 the right time? And what should they do to, quote-unquote, upgrade it? The most obvious thing to do, as always, would be a performance boost. With the Nintendo Switch, I'd probably lump in an upgrade to the screen in there as well, especially with the whole handheld console hybrid thing. Whenever you can shove some more power in there to improve graphics in that, it's nice. However, that brings with it a bunch of other problems. You don't want to segment the player base. I do not think it would be a good idea to have any games be exclusive to a more powerful system at this point. You know, we're still so early on in the system's life, and yeah, you're going to split the audience. If you have a Switch Pro, let's say, and there are games exclusive to it come out next year, well, then everyone who's bought in a Switch and still playing on the older Switches up until that point, they're not going to be able to play those games. It could happen at some point, but I definitely wouldn't do something like that, something that dramatic in 2019. But yeah, if you could get some of the games to run better, the shooters come to mind immediately to me, things like Wolfenstein 2 and Doom. If you could get those games running at the same resolution, but at, say, 60 frames per second, I think that would be sick. But then there's also the problem of the battery life. If you're going to increase performance, it will likely suck even more battery. We don't want to have situations like, oh, now Breath of the Wild looks and runs even better than ever, and you can play it in handheld mode for a whole 25 minutes before your Switch dies. Like, oh, great. So the battery, no matter what, I think really should be something that they do focus on improving. The storage, too, I think it is still insanely stupid that you can have people going out, buy a Switch, and buy their first game for it, and if it's one of those ones that require additional storage, you're going to be sitting there like, oh, and you have to buy the SD card too for your first game. Either build more storage into the systems or include a card with the systems, especially since they have that deal going on now with SanDisk with the specific Switch branded cards. You know, just throw one of them in there, you cheap bastards. What else do I hate about the Switch? Oh yeah, can we get some bigger Joy-Cons? I discussed this when I did a video on a potential Switch XL. Even if you don't beef up the screen, give me some XL Joy-Cons. As long as the track fits onto the Switch, as we see with like the new NES controllers that are Switch compatible, you can do whatever you want. Because yeah, especially like breaking those things off and using a single one as a controller, you know, I'm not an anime character, guys. I'm a full-grown man, a large one, and they're too small. But let's actually focus more so on that timing. Late 2019, does that make sense? I think it actually makes perfect sense. Like I said, it's going to happen eventually, no matter what. Late next year, we'll be looking at about 2.5 years into the system's life, and again, with it being a handheld, I think you can justify more hardware iterations, just like we saw with the 3DS. And that's something I was saying a long time ago, like around Switch launch actually, that they're going to be looking to replicate a lot of the 3DS success with this thing. And one major aspect of that is getting multiple into single-family households. Instead of like the Xbox and PlayStation, where most people, most families even own one, they want to have everyone in your home to own their own Switch. As we see with things like the online family plan, right? Oh, for a heavily discounted price, you can get a bunch of subscription, hand them out to all of your kids. And just as with the 3DS, hardware revisions are going to be the best way to get multiple into the house. Sure, you can come out with cheaper models down the line like the 2DS, But I would say even more likely, those of you watching this are probably the big gamers in your respective households, and if you buy a new Switch, what happens to your old one? Sure, you may sell it, but there's a good chance that you may hand it down to a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, kid, whoever, which was exactly how the 3DS system spread like a virus before they had those cheaper 2DS options. People want to keep upgrading to the newest revision, get the different limited edition ones, and their older models just keep getting passed down. I've actually already heard some people say they're doing just that with the Pokemon and Smash Nintendo Switch bundles. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the Smash bundle, and then I'm just gonna hand my original model down to my kid. That's exactly what they want, and it's already begun for many people. And let's also not forget, in terms of the timing, I would bet heavily that we will at least learn about new consoles in 2019. I do think there's also a good chance they start to release next year, but we'll at least hear something about the next Xbox and or PlayStation. And once that happens, all the buzz is going to be centered around those new systems. And Nintendo is definitely going to want to pull something out to be like, hey, don't forget about us over here. So I do think they are going to want to have their own hardware revision to announce around that same time. Because yeah, that's definitely going to be rough for Nintendo when that next-gen hype starts building, but having a hardware upgrade, especially at a time that will align with the new Pokemon game, don't forget the next core Pokemon title is slated to be released at the end of next year as well, so you could launch these things pretty much side by side. A limited edition Pokemon-themed new Nintendo Switch, packaged in with that next Pokemon RPG, now that's how you sell some systems. But yeah, in terms of timing as well, I think 2019 does make a lot of sense. But yeah, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on this possible Switch hardware revision coming in 2019 in the comments. Do you think the timing would be right for an upgrade, and what would you like to see from it? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of when the passing of the Switch ceremonies may begin across the world. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter @JohnnyZakari, and join my Discord, Shy Guy and Friends, link to both in the description below, and as always, thanks for watching.